Welcome to Greenhouse Grower to Grower, the podcast where we're shaping the future of floriculture, one conversation at a time. We talk with the growers, leaders, and innovators shaping tomorrow's greenhouse industry today. From market trends, next generation plants, and innovative production, to the challenges and breakthroughs redefining what it means to grow. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower. Let's dig into what's next together. Well, hey, welcome everybody. I'm Brian Sparks. I'm the editor of Greenhouse Grower, and you are listening to the first of our weekly podcasts. So when we launched the Greenhouse Grower to Grower podcast a couple of years ago, it was bi-weekly, and we wanted to kick off 2026 by going weekly. It's not going to be every episode where we talk to growers in the industry. This will be our chance to kind of give everyone who's listening an update from our team on some of the key things that we're working on, stories we've got coming up, projects that are going on, trips we've been to, trips we're going on. So really just kind of get a look behind the scenes at what takes place at Greenhouse Grower. I'm going to start today's episode by introducing, I'll say, a fairly new member to our team because it was just this last April when she joined, but she's already, really jumped right in strong and had a lot of great conversations with folks from across the industry. Marisa Reyes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be doing these with you and to just share ideas and talk about what we're seeing in horticulture right now and gardening just across the industry. Um, a little bit about myself. I came to Meister Media, as Brian said, in April, and prior to that, I was working with Garden Gate magazine as an associate editor. But even before that, I was on the grower side of things, working in greenhouses, propagating plants, doing the whole shebang. So that's what I went to school for. And after having my son in 2022, I kind of shifted over to this side of things. And I mean, it's been fun. Everybody is great. And I've had nothing but fantastic conversations with people. And yeah, I mean, it's been awesome.
You're one of those rare people that, you come to a company like Greenhouse Grower and Meister Media is our parent company with experience, not just in publishing, but in the industry that you're in, this being floriculture. You don't see that a lot. So I know we were really excited when that chance came up because, and I'll tell you, you keep us on our toes with making sure that we're always up to speed in terms of how we're referring to new varieties and cultivars and genus names. Those are the details that can get very easy to get lost through. But I mean, if I turn a story over to Marisa, she goes through that entire thing and she's telling me, okay, here's what you did wrong here. Here's what you did wrong here, which is great because I need to know how to do things right. So your input there has been really valuable.
Well, I will say you do a lot of things right, Brian. Plant names are hard for a lot of people. It's it's a whole concept in itself. I could have a whole podcast explaining taxonomy, and unless you've really dived into it, it takes a little bit to understand. But I mean, the whole having a writing background too, and also horticulture it's funny because I never thought that would be something that I benefited from later in life. I went right to college thinking I wanted to be an English teacher, and halfway through I'm like picturing what that would look like, and I was so bored in my mind. So, and the only thing I really loved at the time was gardening. And I remember thinking, how can I do this for the rest of my life? But I didn't know horticulture was even a career path. So I, did a couple keywords in Google and then later found, oh, I can get a degree in horticulture. So I ended up transferring from UW Stevens Point to UW Platteville, where I finished my degree. And, it's just been off to the races from there.
Nice. That's a great example of what you're talking about there. I refer to an organization called Seed Your Future a lot on this podcast and in the articles that I write. One of the things that they have on their website is a resources page that goes over all of the possible careers that can be found in horticulture and floriculture. Some of which, I mean, you're in the greenhouse day to day, you're dealing with plants and all that. Some of which you may not see or work with plants at all. The things that come to mind for me are human resources, accounting, marketing, social media,
Yeah.
and then what the background that you bring, both on the plant side and on the writing side too. There's careers out there that you don't always think of. So that's great.
That is very true. And, even in getting a horticulture degree, I thought about what am I going to do after this? And my thought is always greenhouses. I didn't ever really think about media when it came to horticulture. So that was kind of a new concept to me. when I thought about it. Like, I remember laying in bed and I sent the whole reason I even got into the media side of things. I was laying in bed and I randomly sent a DM to Garden Gate on Instagram. And I was like, hey, if you ever have a remote position, and this is during the time where COVID's happening. So, like
Yeah.
nobody's working. I'm trying to still figure out how I can garden and make a difference and do all these things. And somehow, they took a chance on me and hired me. And that's how I am where I'm at now. But that was never something I had thought about before. So, and
Nice.
I don't know if that's just something that's like, maybe it's, cities, but we don't really talk about horticulture and natural resources in the same way that you do more northern here in Wisconsin. Like, I wasn't really, immersed into nature and sustainability in the way I was until I was at UW Stevens Point. I honestly feel like it was something completely off my radar. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll say again, we are happy to have you on board. And I know you, like I said, you've already had a lot of great conversations in the industry. And as we'll talk a little bit later on in the podcast here, getting a chance to get out and really talk to people in person. That's really the best way to learn. I come from the, strictly the media side. So when I came to our company, I didn't have any of the horticulture experience. And I found quickly the way you learn is jumping right in, going to places, talking to people. And that's the great thing about this industry is folks are more than willing to share some of the things that they do and they do well. It's not an industry that keeps a lot of secrets. I mean, as a lot of people, as a lot of growers I've talked to have said, what's the phrase? And I'm going to butcher this, but a rising tide lifts all boats. I hope I got that right because I always get those those phrases
I
wrong.
don't think I've
But
heard that one.
okay, well, you know what I'm talking about. You need the whole industry to be strong, both individually for the whole industry to be successful. So, um, yeah, that's what I want to say. I didn't say it the right
Yeah.
way, but it's there
It's
somewhere.
inspiring in so many ways. I mean, not even just like what goes on behind the scenes, but it's visually so inspiring.
Oh yeah.
Like you walk into a greenhouse and you see all of the color, and it's hard to not just like feel like you're in a dream or something. And it's something wonderful to be part of. And I really love it. And especially as we're moving through, and each year it seems to be that the industry brings something different, whether it's a trend or a new awesome plant like the firefly petunia that we saw at
Yeah.
Cultivate, and everyone went crazy over that. But as people are starting to garden differently, the industry is changing a lot, and I've been really happy to see how that's unshaping and be part of that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, and I want to talk about some of those trends here in a second because I mean, you're already seeing a lot of trends that you've already told me this is really something that stands out to me that I want to, look into a little more. Before we get to that, though, and I know I mentioned at the beginning, part of these podcast episodes will be kind of talk about where we've been and where we're going. So I had the chance to kick off 2026 by going to the MANTS show in Baltimore, which I'll say right off the bat was one of the best experiences that I've had at that show since I've been going for the past few years. Um, Probably one of the main reasons being the weather. So often this time of year, you go to Baltimore, and last year it was 20 degrees, it was snowy, it was windy, and that 2-minute walk from the hotel to the Baltimore Convention Center
Ooh,
was like walking into a freezer. This year it's in the
right.
50s, and I have a longer walk from the hotel, but I'm wearing a light jacket, and that's about it. So right away, my spirits were in good shape. And then you hit the trade
The
show
vibes
floor,
were
and
good.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, those vibes make all the difference sometimes.
Yeah,
You know,
true.
my own perspective was that this year's show was consistently busy. I'll say we got in like early Wednesday afternoon and we're there until roughly late Friday morning. And the traffic on the trade show floor was as strong as I've seen. You get those lulls sometimes. I didn't really see too many lulls this year. And in talking to a lot of the exhibitors who were there, because it is a show that doesn't really have an educational schedule to go along with it. So you're spending basically all your time there walking the trade show floor when you're not maybe having individual, cups of coffee and other meetings with folks. But um, everybody that I talked to said that, the traffic for the show was great this year. There were some things that stood out to me. Usually when I go to Mance, I try and get a sense of, I know the year's just started, but where are we headed as an industry? What are the vibes that we're looking at? Things seem to be all pretty positive. A lot of new product innovation. I set in on a new product demonstration that you'll see more of from our team as we roll it out through our newsletter over the next couple of weeks or so. Talking to companies and the conversations that they have with growers, my sense is, there's uncertainty now in terms of, and every year there seems to be this uncertainty over, where's the consumer going to be, and with the way things are around the world, how should I be investing a lot? So I'm getting a sense that there might be a little bit of a pullback from some expectations some growers have in terms of, this is how much of money I want to spend because I'm not really sure where things are going to be. But, there's a lot of other folks that said, you know, we need to keep moving forward every year as an industry. We can't stand still and let the rest of the world pass us by. So, whether it's through the adoption of, new biological materials or certainly AI that came up in a lot of different conversations I had, that's something that this industry is going to continue to look at, invest in, and look for ways to make it work for them. I've been earlier today, I was putting together a short trip report on my trip to MANTS that I share with our team internally, and then I'll be putting together an article that will go on our website to just outline a few of the key trends and takeaways that I saw. Those are a few things that I was going to mention right off the bat. I love hearing discussion on new innovative tools that this industry can benefit from. So, and I think there's no shortage of that. A lot of companies have said, even if that we're not necessarily introducing something now, stay tuned because we got a lot of great new things coming out. So it's always a really nice way to kick off the year at a show like Mance, and it really hammers home that spring's coming. We got a lot of work to do, but we're all in it together. So
Yeah, speaking of spring, we had a 55-degree day yesterday here in Milwaukee, and I was shocked.
yeah.
What is happening?
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah,
It
I
was.
mean,
I mean, here in
to go
Cleveland, it
right off
started off in the
that.
40s today. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, totally good. I think we're just going at the same time here. We're both excited to be talking about all the stuff that's going on right now.
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah.
I always find it interesting, just AI in general, just the skepticism, but also the curiosity. I never imagined AI to be used for what it is today and like how it's starting to shape and all the new technologies that are coming out. And there's a lot of great benefits, I think, especially in this industry. And if people can, grab onto that and figure out how to use it, I think there's going to be a lot of really good opportunity there for people, especially when it comes to efficiency and production and,
Yeah.
being able to keep track of stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and not that we even call AI a trend because it's here to stay, but
Right.
looking at trends, I know we kind of kicked off the conversation with some of the things that you're seeing and looking into as we kick off the year. What's kind of jumping out at your mind in terms of this is something that we really need to be following closely as an industry?
Purpose-driven plants for sure, especially, younger generations of gardeners. We want plants that are going to have a purpose. So whether that's for pollinators or, a food garden, something that's going to be easy to maintain, drought tolerant, stuff like that. I think it's trending now, but I think it's going to be trending for a really long time. And it's important, I think, for the industry to prioritize stuff like that and to also use, this is a way to build a really great marketing program for plants like this. And
Yeah.
even nurseries too can do similar things. But I just wish people would talk more about bird gardens. I think we talk
Mm,
so much about butterflies and bees and but what about the birds? That's what I want to see more of is
yeah.
plants for birds.
Okay. Okay. I know you were also talking earlier today about, how people go about finding the plants that they want. That's always one of the big struggles is,
Yeah.
you've got this new wave of consumers. They're shopping for plants in different ways. They're looking for different types of plants. And I know we try and keep
Mhm.
track of that as much as we can, how to make that, a better resource for the industry. What are you seeing in that area?
It's not so much about browsing on your laptop anymore. People are just using their phones, and QR codes are everywhere. Companies that are actually taking the time to put a QR code on their labels and bring customers to a page of information or recommend a different plant, like maybe as you're reading through it, this plant's not going to work for me. But then over here, they have a whole section that shows you different plants that would. I think that's very, very smart. And I mean, I know for me too, whenever I'm looking up stuff, I'm not pulling out my laptop and searching Google. I'm just going right on my phone to do it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, shifts like that make sense to me. And everybody has a phone and it's, you go out in public, you see it. People are on them 24/7. There's a video of everything. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. In terms of what we're working on now, and this is kind of where we want to give an update on what happens internally with our team. So, our January issue, both of us just received our hard copy of the January issue in our mailboxes yesterday, which means now we're working on our February issue, which tends to be one of the bigger issues of the year. I know on my end, and this goes back to a lot of the conversations I had at MANTS, working on a couple stories that are focused on, again, AI implementation and how you can have the right software to address the needs that you have. Um, Talking to a lot of folks in the industry about different ways to recruit and retain new talent, whether it's something like looking at the benefits that you offer and changing things up, or focusing on things that you do well that might attract the next generation. Biologicals being an example of that. Two of the growers I talked to today have been long time, advocates and users of biological materials, and they use that in their marketing to attract talent and tell them, this is our path to being, sustainable leaders in the future of the industry, and it's worked out well for them so far. In addition to that, looking at just overall IPM and how to develop the best strategies for that. So, like I said, our February issue is generally one of the bigger ones in the of the year. So, a lot of work going into that. You'll also see if you get the January issue, we've got our Leaders in Floriculture program. So this is all tied into Greenhouse Growers' Future of Floriculture focused mission. And the Leaders in Floriculture program is where we work with companies from across the industry and really, allow them to, communicate what they're doing in terms of sustainability, in terms of innovation, in terms of just anything new to help, build the future, not just for them and for their segment of the industry, but for the future, but for the whole floriculture industry as a whole. Now I'm having additional conversations with some of those companies. We'll be building out in future episodes of this podcast some of those conversations. So that's kind of a sneak peek of what you can expect to find from me over the next couple of weeks. Marissa, what are some of the big things that you're focused on right now in terms of what you're working on?
Well, if you haven't seen it yet, I am pushing out a series of Pantone color of the year
Yeah,
varieties. Well, plants that reflect these varieties. Um, sorry, reflect the color. But I mean, yeah, I think it's awesome. It's really fun to go through everybody's submissions. There's a lot of great options out there. Um, do I wish maybe Pantone picked a cool purple or something? Probably, but that's okay. And I'm really excited about the series. There's going to be three of those articles. We've also been pushing out field trials from 2025 that you
yeah,
can find on our website. And I'm really focused on right now is poinsettias, which it's up for debate if it's poinsettia or poinsettia because
yeah,
I've been hearing both. So
yeah,
up to you to decide. But yeah, I mean, all these different whites and even painted varieties, I've been finding or learning that people are actually painting them like blues and, lime greens. And maybe I'm just, not I don't have my eyes open in public or something, but I've never seen that, in a big box store here. I haven't seen a
yeah.
blue one or, but maybe that's just me. So I'm working on covering that and what the future looks like because we're also used to, just the classic reds, but there's a lot of room for really cool, awesome varieties and especially novelty ones. I think people should take advantage of those.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and just kind of going back to the color of the year for a second too. I do laugh sometimes, but it seems like every year when Pantone announces their color of the year, there's always some, disgruntled thoughts over why did they go in this direction? And, you know, I the breeders in this industry clearly respond to all of that. So, I mean, you know, and I'm sure you found this out. I used to do that same process that you were doing, where we reach out to the breeders and say, "Hey, can you tell us about some of the varieties that you have that kind of complement this color?" And you get no shortage of great feedback, even if there's, maybe
Oh,
some disagreements over what what went into the final
the
decision. One of
colors.
our one of my former coworkers here was partially colorblind, and every time they make the announcement, he's like, "Okay, so what's the big deal? Why are you guys
He's
fighting
like,
over
doesn't
this?"
matter.
Right, right, right.
That's too funny. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. I think Monrovia submitted about 18 different varieties, and like I could pick through this forever. It's hard to just narrow it down to three when there are so many.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, and speaking of varieties, it's a little bit on the horizon now, coming up in the end of March. We've got California spring trials coming up. I went for the first time last year, and this is gonna be your first time going this year with a full team from Greenhouse Grower. In future episodes, we'll talk a little bit more in detail on where you're gonna be going and what some of the cool things you'll be seeing. But, your first thoughts on getting to attend your first California spring trials this year.
Not nervous. I mean, it sounds so intense, but I'm really excited. So I would say nervous and excited and, just hopeful. I think it's gonna go great. Well, I'm pretty positive it will, but I'm just looking forward to seeing all the different plants. I mean, that's always what I look forward to the most when it comes to these big shows. Just seeing what everyone's working on and what catches my eye and what I can put in my garden next year or in a
Yeah.
couple years.
Well, and as someone who went for the first time last year, it is one of those things where, it can be intimidating at first. You walk in and there's just plants everywhere, and your immediate thought is, okay, what do I focus on? This is where the folks who are at those companies are really helpful. And, here's what we really think is gonna, make some waves this year. Whether it's new series or new varieties. So there's not gonna be there's certainly not a shortage of really neat things to see. I'm sure that you'll get a lot out of the trip. I will put in a quick plug. The National Garden Bureau has for the second year in a row organized registration for CAST. So if you're listening to this, you go to, I think it's caspringtrials.us, and then that takes care of all your registration needs, and you can set up every stop along the way. There's been a little bit of movement this year in terms of, where some of the breeders are going to be, but just based on my experience last year, it's definitely a can't miss event for folks in the industry who really want to keep on top of what's happening in terms of new varieties.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the first one. I mean, Cultivate was so much fun and this seems to be even bigger than that. And
Oh
I
yeah,
got
oh yeah.
really, really sick at Cultivate this past year. And also too, when you work from home and you hardly get out of the house because you have a small child and then you go into a large crowd, I mean, it's pretty easy to just get every germ
Oh
that
yeah,
gets
I felt so
around.
bad for you last year. So just to give everybody kind of the backstory, so Marissa got down there. She, Saturday and Sunday, she's out, out talking to people, walking the show floor, going to classes. She calls me Monday morning, and I could barely hear her talk, and she's like, "I got something." So we said, "Okay, just stay in the room. The last thing you want to do is start, spreading what you might have across to everybody else." So yeah, I know
Yeah,
your
I
your
know.
Feltimate experience got cut short. So
It did, and I mean, it was fun, especially too, that was my first time there, so I was really just trying to find my groove and get comfortable in things, and as soon as I did, I just went down, so
yeah,
that
yeah.
that was fun. Yeah, I stayed an extra day and, I didn't get back to Milwaukee, I think it was, like, after 1 a.m., the following day, so that
Yeah.
was a lot of traveling.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. So as we start to wind down this discussion, one of the things that I'll put in another plug for is if anybody listening to this has got ideas on things you want to hear from us or people that we should be talking to, feel free to let us know. We'll have this available on all the podcast platforms. We'll have it on our LinkedIn page, or just go to greenhousegrower.com, look for either Marissa or I's contact information, drop us a note, tell us what you want to hear more about. We're definitely open to new ideas, and always looking to talk about things that you're telling us that you want to hear about. So nice way to keep the conversation going. One of the things I'll ask, and I'll probably ask this over every one of these types of episodes that we do, is something that you as a listener, or that people who listen to this don't know about you. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Marissa. What is something that somebody's
Okay.
listening? And granted, you're fairly new to the industry and the company, but so it's pretty wide open. But tell me something about you that people don't know.
So it's funny when you ask me this, it's like you can never think of something about yourself, but I I do have one interesting fact, and I know yours is social media based, so I kind of went the same route. But I have a Instagram account that I started back in 2016 purely for gardening, and it's only about gardening, and it has over 11K followers. How that happened, I don't know. Um, I guess I was just saying the right thing about plants, and here I am.
Yeah. Are you still keeping it updated or?
I do, yeah. Not as often as I used to back then.
Okay.
Life gets busy as you get older and,
Yeah.
have kids and all that. But yeah, I do. I still post, but not like weekly or anything crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine is, and I know we were joking about this earlier. So, I turned 50 last year, and I'm a big music lover, like all different kinds of music. So, I started to think to myself, there's probably not going to be too many more situations now where I'm going to come across a new song or a new band that is going to completely blow me away, and I'll think to myself, hey, this is going to be, one of my all-time favorites. So, what better time than now to put together my own personal list of my 100 favorite songs of all time? So I started thinking about
Jeez.
that late last year. So as I was telling Marissa, it was a process, putting together a list that I think when I was finished with the initial list, it was probably 150 different songs, narrowing that down to 100 and then trying to figure out from there, okay, these are going to be in my top 50, these are going to be in my bottom 15, trying to figure out the order from there. Someone who likes so many different kinds of music, it was just painstakingly difficult, but I put it into a final version that I was ready to do. And on my own personal Facebook page, I've been posting one day at a time since probably early November or so, my own countdown. I think I actually hit the halfway point this week, so I can't share anything with anybody in terms of what's going to be on the
That's
rest of the
awesome.
list. But it's just, I think it's a pretty eclectic mix. Yeah, I was actually a college radio DJ for some time. I went to John
What?
Carroll University outside of Cleveland. Yeah, so
You can't tell
I,
us two things about yourself, Brian.
this
Only
is
one.
true. I should have said that. I know. Well, I mean, I guess it ties together because I was a music fan before that. That really got me interested in listening to a lot of new things. So, um, yeah, so it's been fun so
That's
far.
awesome.
Every time I post a video with my, this is number 50 or whatever, it's the excitement of letting the world know 10 people at a time, you know, what I'm thinking
Yeah,
about
I
at the
gotta
time.
know.
So,
Is Brass Monkey by Beastie Boys on there?
Brass Monkey is not, but there was another Beastie Boys song. Um, so What You Want, which is from Check Your Head, one of my favorite albums of the early 90s. I know there's some debate over, what's the best Beastie Boys album, but So What You Want is probably my favorite song by them. So that made my list somewhere in like the 70s, I think it was.
Awesome.
Uh, a
Cool.
lot more to come. Um, so, Marissa, thank you for joining me on the first version of this type of podcast. And again, just to remind folks, we're still going to be having our regular conversations with growers and with others across the industry. So, but we'll be rotating in and out of some of the conversations like this. And it won't always be, Marissa and I might be, myself and then one of our new editors, Kristen Zeitz on the team. So I'll probably talking to her. You and Kristen could be having some conversations as well. So, with the overall goal of turning this into a weekly podcast discussion and just trying to, talk about as many new and exciting things as we can. So, Marissa, I appreciate you taking the time today, and folks who are listening. Hope you enjoyed this. Let us know, if you have ideas for future topics or people to talk to, and watch for more episodes down the road. Thank you for joining us. You can learn more about this and other topics at greenhousegrower.com, and you can also follow Greenhouse Grower on LinkedIn. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. And please leave us a rating or review, as it helps other listeners find the show. The Greenhouse Grower to Grower podcast is produced by the team at Meister Media Worldwide. I'm Brian Sparks, editor of Greenhouse Grower.